Something that they don't tell you about being a parent is that you can tell when you've just screwed up your kid's psyche permanently for the rest of their lives in a way that they'll never recover from. It's very easy to tell. And as they get older, it's possible to do more and more damage because there's more psyche to damage, and that's frightening, because my daughter's 8 now, and it's like when she was really little, you didn't really think about that stuff because it would just kind of be like, oh, whatever, she's not going to remember it, Not big things, little things that just are like, yeah, well, there's the stakes are lower, basically. And then the older she started to get, the more it was like, oh, that is going to be a 2-year relationship with a guy who hates you right there. That little incident. When she gets her first divorce, I'll have to be like, sorry, man, I showed her Hereditary when she was 8. My bad. In my defense, she said that she really wanted to watch it. And she loves horror movies and she loves being scared. She loves being scared. She was like, please, I want to watch something scary. I want to watch something traumatizing. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. Are you sure? And I said, well, maybe that's not a good idea. And she said, please. And she would not stop, saying, please show me something scary. So I was like, okay, here you go. And you could just tell. I knew immediately that I had really screwed up. Because she was completely silent for about a week. And then gradually she started to come back around again, But she was never the same after that. That's the other thing too. It's like you start to see as they get older, the depths of the despair that they are able to experience gets lower and lower. So it's like you unlock new despair. And it's never positive. It's never good things. Because all the joy that they will ever experience happened when they were a baby. Happened when they were like a couple of years old. Now, for the rest of their lives, it is just going to be experiencing new depths of sorrow that they previously did not think were possible. And that's a scary thing. And it's scary to know. It's scary to bring a being into this world and to accept that hopefully if you do your job right, they will have a lot of good memories. Hopefully if you do your job right, they will have a long, healthy, good, prosperous life. They'll find someone they love. Maybe they'll even have kids of their own one day. But I feel a certain personal responsibility for every bad thing that will ever happen to them. Because it's my fault. All of it is my fault. It's my fault for even having you in the first place. And I wish so much sometimes that I could go back in time and not make you, just so that you wouldn't have to experience this negative emotion. And I would do it if I could. To save you from that. And on some level, I guess, no matter how good of a parent you are, no matter how much you do everything right, people are flawed, and they're going to grow up to have problems of their own because of you. And I definitely feel like this is one of those times. It's one of those times where I'm sitting here this morning thinking, I wish I could go back and undo it. I wish I could spare you from this world. Because all I wanted to do was show you the beauty of this world. And I didn't know how much pain truly was in it. If I had, maybe I would have done things differently. You know, her mother, when I think about the actual person her mother was, that's somebody who sometimes it feels like was just cursed from the beginning. Somebody who was doomed. Even during all the happy moments that we shared, you could feel this kind of dark cloud that was always there. Not that I knew specifically what was going to happen, but some people, I think, are just doomed. And I hope my daughter isn't doomed. We sort of half planned to have her, half did not. You know, we didn't do anything to really... In a way, I guess it was planned because the circumstances lined up, but, you know, I don't know if specifically we were like, yes, let's make a baby, let's have a daughter, you know. We just sort of, I mean, and to a certain extent, how planned really is any child on this earth? I think if you look at all the children who were born on this earth and the circumstances into which they were born, you know, a lot of them, probably the vast majority of them, were not planned in the traditional sense, you know. You know, we never really thought about, we just didn't think about it. And when you're with somebody who you do love, all of a sudden it's like your brain kind of plays tricks on you and you're willing to. You want to do these things because they'll bring you closer together, you know. You want to do anything to be closer to the person. So when it happened, we were like, well, should we get rid of it? And then that's what's kind of the knee-jerk response that we both had. And then we were like, well, I don't know. I mean, you know, maybe there's a reason this happened. Let's just do it. I mean, do you know how many stupid people have children? How many people on this earth manage to raise children? And not all of them turn out to be serial killers. So, I'm sure if we had kids, we'd probably be better parents than 90% of parents on this earth on our worst day, you know. Do you know how many kids throughout history probably have been born, throughout history since the beginning of time, have been born into the worst possible circumstances? And yet, all of this is still here, you know. So maybe there's something to be said for children being born into bad circumstances. Because surely the number of children who have had perfect upbringings has got to be very small. Statistically insignificant. And that's what I do for a living. I'm a tech person. So I work with statistically insignificant things all the time. She never knew her real mother, and she never will, probably. And you know what? That's a good thing. Maybe if she had been able to meet the person who used to be there, if there was a way to go back in time and meet that person. But that person is gone. Gone. I really wanted her to have somebody. I figured it was better than nothing. You know, better than nothing. I had started, I was working with AI for a long time. I was working with AI before the past couple of years when people started to really, it really started to permeate into mainstream culture before it became this ubiquitous, I'd been working with it for years before that. Back at a time when, AI could generate, an entire article. Basically, what I used to do for one of my jobs this was years ago. I'm not sure if everybody realizes just how long this has been going on. Because everybody is kind of aware that everything is AI generated now. Bullshit. But would you believe me if I told you that's been the way that it is for decades? Decades. You just didn't know about it. Almost everything you read online. The difference was that we used to have to generate it with AI, and then somebody would have to go through and take out all the things that didn't make any sense. And write it so that it was in comprehensible English. But the thing about the internet is that you just need stuff. You just need stuff there. There just needs to be a lot of shit. It doesn't have to be quality. Quality actually is a hindrance to you. Quantity is your best advantage. So you could have an AI generate an article about something. An article about going on vacation to Paraguay. I've never been to Paraguay. I've never been there. I don't know anything about it. The AI certainly doesn't know anything about it. But together, we are writing the number one result for articles about vacationing in Paraguay. So when you Google stuff to do in Paraguay, almost all of those results are written by an AI and a person who has no idea what they're talking about combined. And it's been that way for decades. We're actually better off now, if you ask me, because at least now the AI can at least have some semblance of understanding what it's talking about. It was over before it even started. You guys have no idea how over it was. For how long? It's been over. It just takes a while for the poison to reach the bloodstream. Shit. God fucking damn it. Why does it do that? I don't understand why it does that. I hate that. Fucking stupid shit. Sorry, I'm waiting for an Uber Eats order. It's impossible in this town. So, you know something? It's interesting how skewed society is in favor of people who have two stable parents. The nuclear family, I think they call that. You know, because if I had just, and maybe I should have homeschooled her, I don't know, but I mean, I didn't have time to do that, but, you know, everything was fine for the first few years. You know, people, it's not a give. I mean, I guess you could argue nature versus nurture, like the understanding that one has a mother, maybe is in there instinctively somehow, but for the first several years, you know, it was me and then my sister, and then obviously various other members of the family who would come and help out. And it was fine. It was fine. She had everything that she needed. She was very happy, you know. It wasn't until she fucking started going to that school and they started giving her all these projects to do with her mom. She started saying, oh, I hear I had to write 10 sentences about your mother, you know. What is your mom's favorite fruit? You know, all of this stuff. That she started to ask questions and they started to plant the seed of doubt, you know. And I could see that change happening in front of my very eyeballs, you know. All of a sudden, she started at that stupid school, and then within like a month, she started asking like, where's my mom? You know, what about my mom? This and this about my mom. And I was like, you never cared about this before, you know. This was never a problem before. It's like, what? You are literally teaching these kids to be dissatisfied with the way that their lives are, you know? Because you think that that's the way that it's supposed to go. That's the way that it's supposed to be. And then they get FOMO about the fact that they don't have a traditional mother figure. It would have been fine. It would have been fine. You know, eventually I'm sure she would ask questions, but I was hoping it would have been later when she was older. You know, when I was hoping that she was not going to grow up with a gaping hole inside her being, you know. That's what I didn't want to happen. I guess, you know, I was just kind of trying to kick the ball further down the court until she was old enough to really understand what was going on and have the emotional tools and the emotional resilience to be able to process that. You know. That's all I was trying to do. But she kept asking these fucking questions. And so I figured, you know what? If all she needs is just a general placeholder, all she needs just an answer for the questions, Yeah, I have a mom. I hear from her sometimes, just so that it's not a big question mark. And it's nothing that I know that her mother would not actually say if she was the person who she was. It was nothing crazy. It was just, I thought that it would be, because again, like I said, that was my job. My job was that I would write things with the help of AI from the perspective of somebody else, from the perspective of an expert on traveling to Paraguay, or from the perspective of, I don't know, all these things. And, if you look at it in a certain way, it's like, your understanding of a person. This is something at my work we've really, really been trying to fixate on, is the fact that your understanding of another human being is mostly you. You're getting stimuli from that other person, but you're filling in those details with the person that you are. So everybody who you know and have a relationship with really is just you projected onto another person, and you're sort of filling them with details that are going to make their relationship to you the most advantageous to you and the most easy for you to deal with. So I figured she just needs somebody who she can project those emotions and feelings onto. She just needs to hear from her mom, as a young kid, until every once in a while, like every couple times a year, until she gets old enough to where she's like, yeah, I got it all under control. I got everything in my life figured out. It doesn't really matter to me whether I have a mother or not, because I have figured my shit out on my own anyway. So now it's just like, probably easier because it's one less person she's got to keep in touch with. So it was just that birthday letter that it started with. It was just the letter that I thought, what I was trying to do with that letter. It was an exercise in, if her actual mother wrote her a letter, if I think back to the person her actual mother was, a decade ago when I knew her, what would I know that she would say in a letter now? If she knew that this daughter of hers grew up to be the person who she is, what would she say? And I, at that time, a couple years ago, AI has made some pretty crazy advancements, which is sort of the other problem here. At that time, it was just the letter, and I had to clean it up a lot. So it's mostly my letter, and it was awesome. She was so happy. I've never seen her that happy to get that letter, to read that letter. And she started keeping it with her all the time. And she said, I read it every day. And I was like, you read that every day? How come you don't read my letters every day? I never wrote her a letter. Well, I guess I did write her a letter. It's that letter. So that made me feel good too. Ideally, the parental unit should act as one entity anyway. But then it was like, if you give a mouse a cookie, it was like after that letter, then it became When's mom going to write me another letter? Can I see mom? You know, that like opened the floodgates. So I was like, you know, when kids are young, you can sort of, everything's out of their control anyway. So, you know, you can just sort of say like, oh, she travels a lot for work and she's not able to come, you know, for whatever reason. But she loves you very much, blah, blah, you know, as you can see in that letter. And the letter basically said, you know, like, I'm so sorry that I can't be there for you more. But when you're older, you'll be able to understand the truth. I didn't say it like that because that's very foreboding. But I did, you know, I just gave her something to look forward to. I was like, when it'll all make more sense when you're older, and we'll be able to have something when you're older. So it worked as intended until the next birthday. And the next birthday, I didn't really realize I had kind of set a precedent now, you know. And I didn't realize also the expectation that she had, because it's like with a kid, you know, kids get these ideas in their head, and then it's like that's their whole world. Like, their entire world. And I forget this sometimes, because when you become an adult, your world becomes multifaceted, and you know not to put all your eggs in one basket. You know, but her whole world is like, if I say that we're going to go to the store to get something that she wants next weekend, that is her only reason to be alive. That is the only thing that is motivating her entire existence throughout every day. In a way that I sort of underestimated. You know. And I sort of had I was thinking, you know what, it'll be brutal maybe at first, but all I'm going to do, I think it's important that she doesn't get a letter for this birthday. So that, I think that it would be far worse in the long run to give her another letter for this birthday. Because then that sets the precedent, yes, it's going to be every birthday. As opposed to, if she doesn't get one for this birthday, then she knows to expect it might not be every birthday, and that'll be a more reasonable expectation. Until eventually we can just phase the letters out completely. You know. But it was another thing. It was just like when I showed her Hereditary. When that letter didn't come. She was asking me all day. Checking the mailbox. All day. She even went up to the mail. I was trying to do something on my computer. She went up to the mailman. The poor mailman had no idea what the hell was going on. She asked the mailman, is there a letter from my mom? You know, and he's like, what do you, huh? And, you know, and he was very nice. He tried to entertain her and be kind, but I eventually had to come out and say, I'm so sorry. You know, there's just a whole situation that's going on that you have nothing to do with, and I'm very sorry about all this. Thank you for all your service delivering mail. You're a very nice guy. And when I tell you that she was crushed, that is an understatement. That is the understatement of the century. Crushed. I even got a call from her teacher saying, is something going on at home, you know, because she's been, you know, she's never gotten in trouble. She wasn't in trouble, but it was just that the teacher was apparently concerned because she just gets so despondent, you know, she just gets like she's gone. Like she's fallen into a deep, dark well. A bottomless pit. And you look at her eyes and you can't see where she is anymore. She's so deep down the dark pit. Exactly like what used to happen with her mother. exactly what used to happen with her mother. Fucking shit. So eventually I had to. What else was I supposed to do? I was like, well, we'll just wait it out a week. A week went by. Still the same. No sign of improvement. They were like, you're going to have to go to a child psychologist. This is not normal. And so I said, okay, I have no other choice now but to write another letter. So I wrote another letter. It fixed everything. Everything was fine then. It was like a switch flip. Not only that, she was doing better than she was before. So then it was like, I have an obligation as her father now to keep doing this. Because it's working. So if we do this long enough, she will get older, like I said, and then it won't be as big of a deal. We've just got to get to 19, 20. Maybe 23, 24, 25. We just got to get that prefrontal cortex. That's all. You know. Just make it through. Somehow make it through. I thought the childhood was going to be the easy part. I was like, well, this is going to be a piece of cake. Everybody was telling me, oh, this is the best part. The teenage years, that's when you got to batten down the hatches. But this is supposed to be the best part of the whole damn thing. So if this is bad now, how much worse is it going to get? And now I'm permanently invested in this. Which sounds like a silly thing to say, but it's like, I now have no choice. My entire existence as this kid. And it's to a point where it causes me physical agony. I think about her every second of every day. I worry about her every second of every day. Every second of every day until the day that I die, I will be agonizing over this kid. And it will never end. Just cancel the order. They might as well just cancel the order at this point. It's been a fucking half hour. It's gonna be cold. Nothing drives me more insane than food that is not the temperature that it is supposed to be. So I ended up paying twice, if not 3 times as more for food that is going to be shittier. And I've been thinking a lot about possible ways to revamp the food delivery industry. But that's my problem. I have a pathological desire to fix everything. And you know what really hurts the most is that I'm starting to realize that my daughter would be better off if I just didn't care. If I didn't care, she'd be better off. But I care so much that I end up doing more damage. It's like how you have this always happens to me with plants too. I should have known that was a forebearer of bad news. Because every time I would have a plant, it would do better when I forgot about it. The most often I kill a plant is right after I first buy it and I'm really excited about having it and I want to take care of it. And I want to do a really good job taking care of it. I water it all the time. I prune it all the time. I look up what's the best soil, what's the best pot. That's when it dies. When I forget about it for 2 years, all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, you're doing so good. Why? That's not fair. It's not fair. Anyway, I guess I was at the second letter. I did start to get a little scared by it. It wasn't even, you know what was scarier than how bad she felt when she didn't get a letter was how good she felt when she did get one. That actually frightened me more than the negative reaction to not having it. And I wonder, maybe I really wonder if maybe I should have just stuck out the negative. Even if it would have been weeks, months, years. I think that might have been better. Because now, again, all I have done by showing her that joy is increased the depth of her despair that she will eventually feel. It's like, there it is again, that dark cloud that's hanging over everything that we do. The more that I broaden her experience, the lower the lows become. And the higher the highs become. But how many highs are there in life, really? I'm sorry I'm being negative, but you know. So let's see, the second letter, the second birthday letter. That was when she started really sort of getting even more militant. I would say militant about asking, can I see her for Christmas? It was like every holiday, every event, major milestone that would come up. The older that she would get, she would become more aware of the world and how things work. And she would get smarter. That's the thing. She's so smart. It sucks. You know, so she started, it was like every holiday would be like, do you think I can see Mom for Christmas this year? Do you think I can see Mom on my birthday? When's her birthday? And I was scared that if she found out, I guess I was paranoid that she asked me and really put me on the spot. And my first instinct was to lie, because I figured if I tell her her actual birthday, then she's going to eventually later in life be able to look up the real person or have an easier chance of finding them. But now I'm thinking, was I just expecting that she was for her entire life just going to be able to accept this lie? Because one day she was going to figure it out. One day she was going to be able to do her own detective work. So I lied. I just made up some birthday. And I tried to pick a date that would give her another thing to look forward to when she needed it the most, you know. So like Christmas, her birthday's in June. Not the daughter's birthday is in June. So it was last week. So we got that covered, you know. And then the time that we really need something to sort of get us through the winter is February, the middle of February. You know. So I told her that her mom's birthday was like February 20th. I don't even remember what I said. You know. February 20th, 21st, 22nd. Because it's like, yeah, you know, it's the doldrums of winter. Dark and cold. So then, it was like, can I see Mom for Christmas? Can I talk to Mom for Christmas? You know, do you think I'll be able to see her this year for her birthday? Do you think I'll be able to see her for my birthday? Do you think I'll be able to see her for Mother's Day? Can I at least call her on the phone? And every time I think she could tell that I was starting to get a little sweaty, you know? Because I was like, no, she's got to, she's busy with work stuff, you know? And then, of course, because she's getting older, she's getting smarter, she's like, what's her job? You know, what could she do for work, possibly, that would mean that she never gets to talk to me, ever? She doesn't have 5 minutes to talk on the phone. You know, it's like, no, she's in a different time zone. You know, she's on a boat. I said that she was on a boat for most of the time. I don't even know whether, but, you know, she doesn't have service. She's in the middle of the ocean. You know, she's in the military. I don't know. She's in rural China. The lie started to get so absurd that even she was kind of like, she's in rural China? I don't think I said that specifically, but I said she's just not, you know. And then I started to get for work, we work with AI a lot. And so as these AI models have gotten more and more sophisticated, you were able to see a marked shift where one could converse with an AI model seamlessly. And I will confess something. A lot of this was because I wanted to see if it would work. Because the thing is, with most people, they already know they're speaking to an AI model. But with a child who has no experience with AI, because I try to limit her electronics, you know. Try to limit her exposure to the iPad and things like that. I don't even really like to let her watch TV. Certainly not on the phone. Certainly not social media, you know. Certainly not electronic communication. And I've been lucky. We've been able to do a pretty good job of sheltering her from that because we live, you know, in Northern California. Sort of, you know, more, we're able to have kind of a cloistered rural setting, you know. We don't really have good internet anyway. The only place that we have internet is my office, which is in a different area. Because that's important to me. When I unplug from work, I can't with all that. Because if you don't separate it for yourself, then you're going to go crazy. So I was able to pretty well shelter her from all of that. And it inadvertently kind of created the perfect experiment. The perfect sort of setting for an experiment to see if somebody with no experience with AI, somebody who didn't know that they were speaking to AI, would they be able to converse seamlessly and believe that they were speaking to a real person in both text and voice. For a while, voice, it was like, that's never going to happen, so just forget about it. We can maybe focus on text. But then, within the past, honestly, year, it started to get to the point where it's like, you know what? You probably could do this with voice. You probably could do it. And it was something that we brought up at work all the time, and I said, you know, I am in a unique situation with my daughter because she's never met her mother. And I've been thinking, and at first it was kind of like, oh, well, it would be horrible to do this, but, you know, I wonder if I could facilitate some kind of experiment where my daughter would be able to converse with an AI model under the impression that it was her mother. And we'd be able to sort of, that would be invaluable to us. And that's the thing, you know. That's really the sad thing about almost all human progress, is that it has been achieved through highly unethical means. So it's kind of a double-edged sword within the scientific and the psychological community. I mean, I consider myself a scientist. I consider myself a psychologist, even though I work in tech, But it's a double-edged sword, because it's like the benefits that you get from these experiments or these findings, which may have been achieved in a very unethical fashion, are going to cause innumerable progress. They're going to benefit humanity so much in the long run that the benefits of these findings will far outlive the individual pain experienced by anyone in particular who maybe was affected by the study, or was affected by the means through which the information needed to be achieved and found, And it's the kind of thing that, unfortunately, it sounds harsh, but it is the truth. And when you are in a position where you are trying to change the world, and when you are in a position where you are trying to better humankind, you have to be ruthless. And you have to be willing to make those decisions. It's like a doctor. I'm not a doctor, but a doctor cannot be worried about how the patient is going to feel when he cuts them open. A doctor can't be thinking, I don't want to do this because cutting people open hurts people, A doctor's got to take the fucking scalpel, slice the person open, pull out their intestines, and get to work. That is the rigor that it takes if you want to change the world, if you want to change humanity. That is what it takes. And I am not saying that I don't feel bad about it. I am not saying that I didn't know it was a bad idea. What I'm saying is that sometimes bad things are good. I'm not explaining it right. Sometimes if you want to live a perfectly safe life where you never cause any harm to anyone else and you never experience any pain or risk, then duct tape your mouth shut, handcuff your hands behind your back, and shut yourself in a basement. But if you want to change the world for the better, you need to get out there and you need to do what needs to be done. And again, I thought this is, for the love of fucking Pete. Could it possibly take to drive over a couple fucking mac and cheese balls? Ridiculous. And every time I shut the door, the camera messes up. So I decided that I was going to start facilitating an experiment. Once a week, I would bring my daughter into my office and I'd say, you're going to be able to talk with mom, for 15 minutes. And I specified several parameters to the AI model to ensure that, we weren't going to have any problems. I said, do not make any promises for the future. If she tries to ask about meeting up, or schedule something else, divert the question. Don't reject, but, change the subject. And that's the thing. The scary thing about AI for me is that it can do all of that stuff now. It can talk with more tact and gracefulness. It can navigate the minefield that is human social interaction far, far, far better than any human being can. It knows the perfect thing to say at any given time. The perfect thing to say. For every prompt, it calculates in a nanosecond what is the best thing that I could say right now. Humans can't do that. Humans say a lot of stuff, and rarely is it the best thing to say, almost never. You know, so with those parameters, the first time it was a little clunky, but it worked for the most part. It did its job, which was that she felt fulfilled by the conversation. Really, all I wanted her to do was feel fulfilled by a surface level conversation. You know, feel satisfied by that. And then the next week she would go back in and, you know, tell her about, really it was mostly like and another thing that I specified to the AI was talk about yourself as little as possible. Because there is no self to you. No offense, right? But, you know, ask her questions about her life, get her to talk about her life and her interests. So that way, the conversation is mostly just her talking to nothing. You know, mostly just her processing things in her life, you know, in a way that is going to be as little destructive as possible, you know. Then that's like, ultimately, isn't that good? Like, isn't that, in the long run, a good thing? You know, I mean, it's like, honestly, I read through those chat logs. ChatGPT is a fucking, I mean, it's not ChatGPT, but you know what I mean. AI is a better fucking parent than me. I don't know what the best thing to say is. Half the time she asks me a question, I don't know what the fuck to say. I let her down. I can tell when I answer her questions, she's disappointed. I screw her up constantly. I wish that I could be perfect. Because the problem was that all of a sudden now, one of her parents was perfect. And it wasn't me. One of her parents could help her navigate through her life and her emotions with the technical skill of the world's most renowned therapist. You know, she can ask it a question and the AI will respond with a perfectly phrased explanation for an 8-year-old, you know. She comes in the car to talk to me and I sound like a caveman by comparison. She's like, who's this fucking guy? And it hurt my feelings. It hurt my feelings. Because all she wanted to do was talk to Mom. And I could never get her to tell me anything about her life anymore. Because she figured, what's the point? This guy doesn't understand me. The AI understands me. Because of course it does, because it's just repeating what you just said back to you. And she started getting more and more distant, not talking to me. I didn't know anything about her life. I had to go and read the AI chat logs to know anything about her life, to know what she did at school, to know what she likes to do, to know what are her fears, you know? Who is the young woman that she's becoming? And I started to realize she would be better off without me. Clearly she would, because I don't know what happened. Something happened at school, or something happened with one of her friends, or I don't know. Something happened online. I don't know what it was. Something happened, and she wouldn't talk to me about it. And it was something very bad. But she wouldn't say a damn thing. She wouldn't say anything. She was just completely quiet. And I can't tell you the primal fear that I felt. Because I knew something had happened. But I fucked myself. Because I thought that it would be better to remove me from her life and her social support network as much as possible, because it probably was. And all she would say, the only thing that she would say is, I want to talk to Mom. Can I talk to Mom? And even then, she would only say that once a day. From the dark pit of despair. And I was like, she's 8 years old. So then I just wanted to find out what happened. So I said, if you talk to Mom, will you tell her what's going on? And she said, yeah. So I shut her in my office, and I was pacing around over and over again, back and forth out. And I never want to feel the way that I felt when I read that chat log ever again. That was definitely one of those moments where I said, I wish I could just undo all of this. This is all my fault. All of this is my fault. And immediately she could tell I was frantic, and I was saying, you have to talk to me about this. You have to talk to me about this. You have to. You don't have a choice. And she said, I don't want to. I only want to talk to Mom about it. And I said, Mom's not fucking real. I'm real. And she didn't really know what I was talking about. You know, because she's a kid. She's like, what? And I said, honey, your mom is not real. Your mom is in a facility somewhere. You couldn't talk to her even if you wanted to. You've been talking to a computer. So you need to talk to me now. Here we go. Finally. Jesus fucking Christ.